This piece comes from Three Men in a Boat by Jerome K. Jerome, a comic novel that follows three ordinary men who are absolutely convinced that there's something deeply medically wrong with them. The story opens with a very modern problem: too much information and too little common sense. Just before this moment, the narrator has gone to the British Museum to look up a harmless illness. What should have been a quick check turns into a mistake as he keeps reading, moving from one disease until he becomes completely, utterly convinced that he's suffering from nearly every illness ever recorded. By the time the extract begins, he has stopped questioning himself and started trusting his own conclusions. He believes that he understands medicine, his body, and his better than anyone else. Is his growing certainty, his dramatic self-examination, and the calm confidence with which he presents himself as a medical disaster, all before he finally intervenes. I first remember going to the British Museum one day to read up the treatment for some slight ailment of which I had a touch. Hay fever, I fancy it was. I got down the book and read all I came to read, and then in an unblinking moment, I'd idly gaze and began to indolently study diseases. Generally, I forgot which was the first that I plunged into some fearful, devastating scourge. I know. And before I had glanced half down the list premonitory symptoms, it was borne upon me that I had fairly got it. I sat for a while, frozen with horror, and then in the listlessness of air, I again turned over the pages and came to typhoid fever. Read the symptoms, discovered I had typhoid fever. Must have had it for months without knowing. Wondered what else I'd got. Turned up St. Vista Stars. Found, as I expected, that I had that too. Began to get interested in my case and determined to sift to the bottom, and so started alphabetically, read up ague, and learned that I was sickening for it, and that the acute stage would commence in another fortnight. Bright's disease! I was relieved to find I had only gotten a modified form, and so as far as that was concerned, I might live for years. Cholera I had, with severe complications, and diphtheria I seem to have been born with. I plodded conscientiously through the 26 letters, and the only malady I concluded that I had not got was the housemaid's knee. I felt rather hurt about this at first. It seemed somehow to be a sort of slight. Why I hadn't gotten housemaid's knee? Why this invidious reservation? After a while, however, less grasping feelings prevailed. I reflected that I had every other known malady in the pharmacology, and I grew less selfish and determined to do without housemaid's knee. Gout, in its most malignant stage, it would appear, had seized me without my being aware of it. And zymosis! I had evidently been suffering since boyhood. There was no disease after zymosis, so I concluded that there was nothing else of matter with me. I sat and pondered. What an interesting case I must be from a medical point of view. What an acquisition I should be to a class. Students would have no need to walk around the hospitals if they had me. I was a hospital. All they would need to do is walk around me and take their diploma. Then I wondered how long I had to live. I tried to examine myself. I felt my pulse. I could not feel my pulse. Then all of a sudden it seemed to start off. I pulled out my watch and I timed it. I made it 147 to the minute. I tried to feel my heart. I could not feel my heart. It had stopped beating. I have since been induced to come to the opinion that it must have always been there, but I cannot account for it. I patted myself all over my front, from what I call waist up to my head. I went around a bit each side and away a little way up the neck. But I could not feel or hear anything. I tried to look at my tongue. I stuck it out as far as it would go, and I shut one eye. I tried to examine it. I could only see the tip, and the only thing I could gain from all of that was to feel even more certain that I had scarlet fever. I entered that reading room a happy, healthy man. I crawled out a decrepit wreck. I went to my medical man. He's an old chum of mine, and he feels my pulse and looks at my tongue and talks about the weather, all for nothing, when I fancy I'm ill. So I thought I would do him a good turn by going to him now. What a doctor wants, I said, is practice. He shall have me. He will get more practice out of 1,700 of your ordinary commonplace patients with one or two diseases each. So I went straight up and saw him, and he said, well, "What's the matter with you?" I said, "I will not take up your time, dear boy, with telling you what is the matter with me. Life is brief, and you might pass away before I have finished. But I will tell you what is not the matter with me. I have not got housemaid's knee. Everything else, however, I have got." And I told him how I came to discover it all. Then he opened me and looked down me. He clutched hold of my wrist, and then he hit me over the chest when I wasn't expecting. A cowardly thing to do, I call it. And immediately afterwards, he buttoned me with the side of his head. After that, he sat down and wrote a prescription, and folded it and gave it to me, and I put it in my pocket and went out. I did not open it. I took it to the nearest chemist and handed it in. The man read it and then handed it back. He said he didn't keep it. I said, "You are a chemist." He said, "I am a chemist if I was a cooperative store and family hotel combined. I might be able to oblige you. Being a chemist only hampers." I read the prescription. 1 pound steak with 1 pint bitter beer every 6 hours. 1 10-mile walk every morning. One bed at 11 p.m. sharp every night. And do not stuff your head with things you do not understand. I followed the instructions with happy results, speaking for myself, that my life was still going on. I then went to meet my chaps. We sat there for half an hour, describing to each other our malady, explaining to George and William Harris how I felt when I got up that morning. And William Harris told us how he felt when he went to bed, stood on the hearthrug, and gave us a clever and powerful piece of acting, illustrative of how he felt that night. George, George but there's nothing really of matter with him, you know? And at this point, Mrs. Poppets knocked on the door to know if we were ready for supper. We smiled sadly to one another and said we suppose better try and swallow a bit. Harris had a little of something in his stomach to check whether there was a disease, and Mrs. Poppets brought in the tray, and we drew and toyed with a little steak and onions and some rhubarb tart. I must have been very weak at the time because I know after the first half hour, I seemed to take no interest in the food Mrs. Poppets had presented to us, whatever the food was, and unusual didn't even want cheese. Regardless, this duty is done. We refilled our glasses and lit our pipes and resumed the discussion of the state of our health. What it was that was actually of matter with us, well, none of us could be sure, but the unanimous opinion was whatever it was had been brought upon by overwork. Thank you.